So Fleet Week's happening, Adam.
Apparently.
Apparently, is that what the sounds that we're going to be hearing through this podcast is?
Yeah, internet went out at work, came home, Fleet Week started. So,
Internet's out, Fleet Week. Just take the kids to go see the
yeah, working on print CSS. It's about as good as it gets.
print CSS. What?
Yeah, so they used to have these things called printers back in the day. And what it would do is print it on really thin trees for people. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
Well, welcome to the podcast, everyone. Today, we're going to be chatting a little bit about some of the conferences. So, conference season is in full swing. We've had lots of announcements from OpenAI and some of their new features with live streaming. We also had some conferences, one of which I spoke at, the Compose Conference, where Netlify they announced a lot of new features with extensions and an AI publisher. So I want to chat a little bit about that. Plus, another company that we work a lot with, Vercel, is having their upcoming Next.js conference. And want to chat a little bit about what we're hoping to see from this conference. And would love to get some of your experience working on the Shad CN clients in VO, Max, and how that's been helping with our own product development. Before we kind of get into that, yeah, let's talk about Compose. So, for those who don't know, Netlify is a developer platform that I came across quite a few years ago. They just recently hit 5 million developers. I'd like to see what number I am on that list because I remember using them when I was at Optimizely, and really they help you to deploy websites directly from Contentful very fast. I mean, there's a lot of competitors out there now that do this, but really when they came out, they were first in their field. And they recently just had their conference, the Compose Conference, which they have every year. It used to be called, I think, Jamstack Conference, where they did announce a few things for builders, which one were extensions. So now we're going to be able to actually extend the Netlify platform for your apps, to be able to do things on Netlify or in the background, and also AI assisted publishing. So they started doing features that would benefit not just developers, but everyone in the content development lifecycle. Adam, you were there with me. What are your thoughts? What were kind of the main things that you heard, and what are the big themes that you heard from?
I mean, one of the things that I was most excited about trying out was their, and here come the planes, by the way, but the async workloads. Um, so definitely recommend. I'm sure they've posted the video or everything from the conference on there from the different sessions. But the async workloads allow you to basically like trigger processes like just like you normally would, but then from kind of run them as different steps and then like have it sleep, hibernate, like rerun at a certain time. So you could maybe use it to like schedule emails or schedule reports to be generated, things like that. So it was really interesting to see that. And like we talked about seeing if we could maybe have it run as like a queue of sorts to like dedupe some requests. So we might have like 5 different um, webhooks trigger, or sometimes like hundreds. But really, we only need that webhook to trigger once. Whatever kind of like the last one is, or something like that. So it's probably not the best use case for what they were doing, but they did talk about, and I missed part of it, but they did talk about using this for some kind of like AI processing stuff, whether it's like ingestion or just different tasks. And I think Brad, you saw probably more of that session when they were showing how they can generate the pages and on the fly. But they did mention that this is what they were using in order to get that done.
Yeah, I think one of the things you quickly realize in AI development is you do need these async jobs because you'll have jobs that take much longer than a regular serverless function can actually do. I think one of the questions, I think Max, you had this earlier today, like, hey, why didn't you just do the headshots? And why was N8N brought into that? And a lot of times what you'll be doing is like these jobs that take 2-3 minutes, or maybe some of the jobs I'm doing now, they're taking like 24 hours to complete because I'm using local versions of AI. You're doing a lot of data cleaning. So like, hey, go and summarize all this data and do these things beforehand. Or I think in the case of the AI publisher, there's a lot of different asynchronous actions that need to happen for that AI publisher to even work. So basically it allows for you to have execution of just different workloads that you may need to do asynchronously. That's not just going to be based off the web. It's event based. So basically you can trigger any of your workloads by specific events, and helping to kind of really just decouple this from the client. It allows for multi-step workflows as well, so that you can break these into just different composable pieces, which is what I really like too, because you may have one process that needs to go and just tag and label all of the data. And then another one that can then happen that then goes and summarizes those based off of what tags it was tagged as. So for instance, you're tagging all your meetings and you want to tag ones that are for a particular customer. Maybe there's things you want to look out for that customer versus another customer. So that would be an example of a multi-step workflow that you could take advantage of that. Being able to do scheduling and sleeping, so making cron jobs, making these hey, every 7 days on Thursdays, search the web and prepare our podcast agenda. Those types of things can be now done. And then making these very simple. This has been Netlify's really big key thing that they've tried to do, is to make these tools accessible for everyone.
Yeah, I can see a lot of that from Netlify. They've always tried to bring ease of use for developers, make the things that were harder before super easy, like getting a good cache layer, automated build system from your like GitHub repository and all that. And if you've been catching up on the serverless world, like the missing step has always been like worker queues. How can we run background jobs on a schedule, on a trigger, and have deduplication and get all the benefits from deferred processing? And seeing Netlify like bringing them themselves, as part of the platform is really cool, because you can get some of this, on userland. Reminds me a lot like ingest, which you can use today with Vercel or Netlify. Allows you to get that background job experience too. But here on Netlify, you just go, click on async workers, get their code, and you're getting that experience as part of your offerings. So definitely looking forward to trying it out.
You said you had a chance, because one of the things that they had built with extensions. So one of the ways that you do this, and a lot of companies are starting to extend the platform, either with these async jobs, is through extensions. And they released this, and I think I'm really excited to start creating some of these, where basically based off of your application, your use case, you can trigger these jobs or have them as part of your application. So you deploy a simple web app to Netlify. Now you have the ability to then let the user install an application or an extension into Netlify, so that it can handle some of the primitives that they care about. It was really interesting when I was interviewing Matt at Netlify, about how he thinks about just exposing some of these different developer primitives of what you need to do, like async job, or deploy a website, like some of these things, and what you can actually configure with it. So they have a few things on here. So plugins that they launched with, like Launch Darkly, Supabase, Salesforce Commerce Cloud. Yeah. What were some of the use cases, do you remember, that they also said they were exploring with this, Adam?
I mean, I think the one about the creating the page on the fly was a good example. And like I said, it was mostly around like the async workloads. I didn't have a lot of time while I was there because I was bouncing around just talking with people and listening to sessions to I did get through like their coding. It's more like they called it like a coding challenge, but it seemed like it was more of a just getting people like comfortable if they've never built an extension before, which is good because I built lots of extensions but never one for Netlify. Um, but yeah, like the make showing you just how easy it is to like have the edge functions, just like kind of like 101 type of stuff to be able to like have a counter and use their blob stores and things like that. So if I had more time, I definitely wanted to get into it to see like, okay, how can I use this in like my everyday today? Especially trying to get into the async workloads, but I don't even think they had like posted anything about that yet, so I didn't have any kind of like documentation that I could find at the time. But like they have some really big names like that have written these extensions. As far as I've seen, that they've been maintained well. Um, Saw a few people at the conference that I know. They have, I think, they built in that I didn't even know were developers actually, um, but had built extensions for Netlify and were there as partners. So I was checking their stuff out a bit, but I think it's really good that they're opening it up for the whole ecosystem for like and more so and with the async workloads, making it easier to do queuing, to not have to go necessarily to another provider just for that one thing. Um, so I'm curious to see what people will build out. It kind of depends on like what part of my life I'm thinking about, like when it would be super helpful. If it's just like from like a DevOps perspective, or if it's from like some sort of like web app or website. It's very different use cases. The flexibility is great, so I'm really excited for that.
Quick question. Async workloads is kind of the first one they have here, but extensions are meant to bring more things. Is this Netlify's solution to bring in other types of things like persistent storage or some other type of resources you get on the cloud?
So they have their blob store that you can use. Like from what they mentioned, like during one of the sessions, it's a bigger conversation here, but basically what they mentioned was that they're not looking to become like a database, like solution. So like they believe in composable. There's people who are going to like knock that stuff out of the park, but there are these like basic kind of tools that a lot of people could use. Like you need a basic blob store. Here's a basic blob store. You need these basic async workloads. Like here you go. If you need 100, everything that like ingest or somebody else might bring, then like this, it might not be a good fit for you. But you probably know that when you're looking. But I think the extensions allow you to combine these more. If ingest had not created one, for example, you could create your own on Netlify, just to extend it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but um, I think they're trying to find like the little, I don't know, I don't want to call them like chips in the paint, but like, kind of like, it's like, here's Netlify. And it's like, well, I kind of wish they had this and I kind of wish they had that, and I don't need this like full fledged crazy solution for it. Like I just want to like store some non-sensitive key values.
Well, a lot of what you have in AI is those blobs, right? Like they're kind of temporary, ephemeral, like the way that we even use, and I've been setting up our own automations, is kind of like you have this basic, like, data store, this like area of like the raw data. Then you have this abstraction layer of like summarized or kind of like AI, like tagged and labeled, maybe summarized data there that then the AI interacts with and it gets what it needs at that time for that job, whether it's a tweet storm, whether it's a blog post, whether it's a um, whatever thing you're trying to do with it. It just needs to grab what it needs at that time. So I think this is a good usage for that, to just data as you need it. You don't need to have that persistent storage necessarily. Because one of the things that I also saw too, a big move towards, which I was really excited to see, is this move towards local first. So in my interview with Matt, he talked about how um, there was a big move towards doing a lot of the data storage on the local machine, and then making it so that these asynchronous jobs could then keep them in sync. And he mentioned a couple of things. So there was a couple of really cool platforms that I'm really excited to test out. Is that I found one of the teams from Fireproof was there. So fireproof.storage. Basically, it's from the creators of CouchDB. If you remember back in the day, CouchDB. So talked to the founder of Fireproof, hoping to have him on the podcast, but really it allows you to write your app so that basically all your storage is local to the user, and it basically can then sync to your cloud, to your AWS, to your Cloudflare on different things. And that leads to a couple different pieces. One, he talked about this app called Linear, which I don't know if you've all have heard about it, but ever since I heard Matt talk about it, I've actually heard a lot. So maybe Google is listening to me, giving me the right social media people talking about this. But one of the reasons he said that he likes it, so this is what they use when developing Netlify internally. But he's like, when you use an app like Linear, he's like, the snappiness, the feedback, like that instant just, working just feels so good. And it's hard to do a local/sync app. So now you're starting to see customers like, uh, they're starting to see things like Fireproof here. They're starting to make these types of apps. And where I think Netlify, where Matt said, how do we make it so that you can make an app as, a local app like Linear that uses web technologies, local sync, but how do you do that very quickly so you can have that synced between the two? So I'm really excited about trying out Fireproof to see, because we have a big initiative to try to get everything running locally for our customers too. So this might be a good piece of the puzzle.
Can you talk a little bit more about Linear, or still kind of reviewing it?
So Linear, what I've seen, so basically this is where it gets into, our particular use case, because the problem with a lot of project management softwares is it's built for product development or they're built for services. And we have both, right? So when I was looking at this product, I was like, hey, so the conversation, should we get rid of Jira? Now, it's one of those systems, sure, I'm sure most of our audience can empathize with this, those systems that everyone hates, but, or at least I do. I don't know about everyone. I won't speak for everyone. A lot of people it's not doing the job that people need it to do. Let's just say that. But it's hard to get rid of it, right? And Jira is probably one of ours. Even at small companies, you have this. But when I was evaluating this and just seeing, and the other thing about project management software to evaluate is it's hard to evaluate by yourself. So the whole point of it is to be collaborative. So you kind of have to make that leap of faith of, hey, we're all going to use this now, not this. But I'll get off my soapbox on that. The things that I saw about it was that it's very, very focused on project management, hooking into yours. It works with site, it has a very opinionated way about how products should be developed. So whether or not you agree with that opinion is up to you, I guess. But I read through their kind of like plans and how they have these, and they're very, very much aligned, like with initiatives, especially like having these different cycles, not sprints, but some sort of like ongoing motion. And then, of course, being able to track different progress across it, being able to quickly label it, having really not cool graphs, but useful graphs, not just cool graphs. So, I mean, I think that was the biggest thing. I also, too, there was a lot of integrations into it, and it looked like a much more kind of like AI, like friendlier thing to work with. Jira is not exactly easy to work with the API and everything that's on there, because it just was built before APIs even existed. So it was just something that I was looking at for that. But it was less around like its usability as a product that we talked about, but more around the technology that was used that we talked about, of like how it's being built at that local first, because that's how it has all of its information locally, and then it just syncs to a centralized place so that users get that super snappy. They can work on it, if they're on a plane or not in internet.
So we're switching next week?
Yes, already switched.
Cool.
Already switched.
Wednesday we're going to Trello.
We'll just try a different one
But
each week. That'll be our next challenge. Different project management.
this one is pretty interesting. Not only in that way that they do their project management. Honestly, it looks like a Gantt chart-ish. But that they value so much documentation and the ability to like go back and forth. If you see, you can kind of write documentation, and then from there you find out the needs and create the tickets and manage everything in there. Anything that's not Jira at this moment. There are a lot of things out there.
I mean, that's the thing, is that it's like, when you have a system that is there, I think that I know everyone has that, switching cost. And I mean, it's hard for a small company like ours to make that decision on these kind of like system of record systems, I think. But the one thing that's nice about it now that I feel very like before, it was like, no, we could all of our billing, everything's done off that. Like, what if I need all this prior information? I had this like sense of like, we can't get off of it because I need this information for the future. When I really look back at it, I'm like, what could I have done with that? When I'm going to go through Jira tickets individually? No, right? Like, but now that it's all stored on our own local database, switching just off the cuff makes it a lot easier, depending on how many ongoing projects we have at any given time. So, because I don't have to worry about losing that.
Well, I'm gonna check it out. I know we're talking about like the development approach, but this one looks the most promising for kind of like our specific use cases, and just how fast we do move, even with, maybe because we have a small team. I just like looked it up. We touched, there's like 235 tickets that were touched last month. Between, and really there's 6 people touching tickets. Everybody else is not touching tickets. So
6 humans.
6 humans. Yeah. Yeah. This would be like humans touching tickets. So yeah. And I can tell you that I've seen it on some months higher than like 500. So there's a lot, depending on like what kind of integrations are going on. How much we want to bombard a dev with like minute details. Which we've gone back and forth on as well. So that's interesting.
That's the other thing too, is that like, while a system does become antiquated, we have invested a lot into those systems and automations that's made it so that a 6-person team could get through 600 or 500 tickets, right? Like, I mean, I think that's on par with what we were doing with a full like 15-person support team at like Optimizely, right? So I think that those are the things you have to think about too, is now like it's not just switching it over, but now rebuilding all those automated systems, and are you going to get the same level? So, but that's always the challenge.
You got a bot for that.
You got a bot for that? I don't think Cameron will like you calling him that. All right. So one of the other things I want to shout out, so the other thing that Netlify announced, which we can kind of watch the video and then talk about this, which is, we talk a lot about, builders and engineers on this podcast and the content that I create. But at the end of the day, who's becoming builders? It's been my life's mission ever since mine and Adam's first job, to make it so that people can update their own websites, so that people can kind of, take, do things on the web themselves, right? And gradually over the last 20 years, it's become easier and easier. And one of the really cool things that Netlify released is called AI assisted publishing, which I'm going to share this video. We'll watch it, and then we can talk about it on the other side. Let's see here.
How many holes do you want me to poke in this?
That's what you're best at, please.
I mean, I think there's definitely a use case for this. Like, if somebody is not managing a lot of content, they want to like, hey, like somebody's going to send me a PDF or a Google Doc or whatever. I want to be able to get it up on the web there. What they're not super clear about here, maybe you know the answer, but it's like how's the design managed? And we deal with like huge sites, right? And like sites that are localized. Like it's not uncommon for like 10, 15 languages. So like how those sort of things are managed, so like it wasn't entirely clear like who their audience was for this. Given that, I would say the majority of the audience I saw there was more like enterprise companies, so like where are they going to benefit from this? Like what does the editing process look like and everything? But from a cool perspective, yeah, like I think it works great. And it's nice that it's built in there, and I can see the play that they're making to get. I don't know what the pricing model is, but if you have to log into Netlify, like, and they're charging for seats, like it's a way to get more non-technical people into seats. So,
What are your thoughts?
To me, it looks pretty cool. It looks like a ideal next step for them after acquiring different companies and getting into the data side of things more, into the content management, getting the one graph, everything. And it looks good. I would like to try. If I have a customer that's like kind of small, only has Netlify, doesn't really want to get a new CMS, and I can build a site. I can build a site either with this or Markdowns. Yeah, I'm putting this on my site.
did they show
Yeah.
how it was stored in the back? Because it looked like they had like a list of blogs. So they have components of some sort, whatever that is. So I guess I'm curious, like, how can those be reused? Like, can they be modified? What, or is it just like they have like these kind of like core common ones that then they say, hey, if Google Docs can do it, then like we can have a component for that. Because Google, you can output a HTML page as well, right? Like you can publish a site on Google if you just need a page, and more than that, but I'd love to see kind of like what the future, like how they're going to extend it. Because Brad, like I know you've done at this point, like with AI, like AI generating all this, even like multiple times, and like we've done like full migrations of content, in order and can manipulate that content and get it into custom models for people so that they can then manually edit it and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know, I'm curious about who you think like the audience is for this based on like people you saw at the conference and everything.
I can tell you who I think their audience is, and I can tell you who I think the audience is probably going to do what's going to happen. So I think their audience is, let's just face it, a lot of people will choose Composable, like Contentful or Sanity, because of the developers. It's usually a developer's choice, right? It's not the marketer's choice. I'll tell you that. And why? Because it's a lot easier to make it up to date. It's a lot easier to work fast. But at the end of the day, a lot of these tools, headless CMSs, are not exactly easy to work with, right? So what ends up happening? You have developers spending high resource time taking a Word document and putting it into a CMS. You have literally developers doing that, right? And I think that, in some respects, if you can, set these things up and you can take that time and you can, your developers don't have to do that anymore, then they can come up with new templates and stuff. What I'm not as clear about is like what you're saying, like, great, a blog post. Like I had that like day 2 of like working with the OpenAI, like literally, like back in like 2022. So I think that that's a great like POC where I think you really, where it needs to come in and where I'm excited to see the like API documentation on it. I actually just tried to go to their site, and since it's in beta, it just says like, hey, AI assisted. There's no like it was with extensions on that. So my understanding when I was talking to some of the engineers, some of the people when I was talking to Matt about it, is that they use it for their own sanity, and basically from the way it works is you go in there and you choose your predefined templates that have been set up, right? And then it takes a look at that document. So that template could be just a title, an image, and a body. I didn't get any information about like, okay, what if it's like a landing page that has like 4 levels deep, right? You have your landing page, a section, then a card, and then an image, and then a URL, right? That's where anyway, it's very easy to go into these things and do a simple blog. That's the easy part. It's the nested piece that I'm curious about. And the way that I heard it is very similar to how we also got early access to Canva's API, where you basically have like, this is for, and a little bit of context. This is the title field and how you use it. This is this and how you use it. So it looks at the document and then intelligently, based off the template and the document, tries to put it in the right places. That's my understanding of it, but without looking at the API documentation, I don't know. If they do that and it's done well, that's great, because that's what we've been working towards, right? Is that ability to do these super nested things so that we get the composability as engineers and we can reduce the overhead of doing that in the content management system. And that can be personalized for every single person.
Yeah. You know, I know I kind of talk about this every time we have an episode, but there is like this like kind of a same workflow, my opinion, like connection to like how humans do it. It's weird just saying humans so much in our lives now, by the way. a human. Like, I was like me dorky kid being like, hello, human. And like, shut up. Anyways, so point is that like, you know, like it's not uncommon for people to come to us and just have like a giant blob of text. Like, I wrote all this. I don't even know how to lay it out. Like, all the time, right? I need content, like, help. You know, it's not that they can't put that content into it, but they're not a designer. And, like, they don't know how to make it look good. And, like, they have components that we've built for them. Again, there's plenty of them that they can use, you know, but they don't necessarily know how to, like, keep that structure. So even creating the template from the beginning, you know, like, I think it'll work for some people. WordPress has templates. Squarespace has templates. They have these things, and I'm sure they're going to have something similar to this if they don't already. You know, but I'm more excited to see like taking a blob of text and basically helping to say, hey, this could have an image here, or you have images already that can work for this, and because now you have an image, it's going to look good as like this like side by side block. It's like, oh, I see a quote here. I know you have a quote type, but because we're so close to our clients' sites, we understand all those components really well. Sometimes better than they do, you know. And we've been doing this for 20 years, so like we know what generally looks good before we even like try stuff out most of the time in general. So, I mean, I think that is more of like the holy grail. It's like, here's a set of components or like rules of like what components might look like. We've talked about this a lot too. Maybe not on the podcast, but it's like, hey, like here's a giant block of text. I didn't put any paragraphs in it. Here's like 2,000 words. I need you to turn it into a web page. That's more accurate of kind of what happens, you know? And it goes through and it's like, do you want me to maybe it asks questions. Do you want more images? Do you no images? You know, things like that. And using like your components or like some core standards can actually like create that and then put it into Contentful, put it into, you know, WordPress, you know, like put it wherever their actual site is. But that's the tool that's actually going to be like helpful for people, in my opinion, because they don't have to make any choices other than kind of in the beginning, maybe.
So yeah, it was my understanding that works with others. I think they're using a version of their like an extension that they built to be able to say like, hey, this is going to your Contentful instance. Like you don't have to host the actual content on Netlify. Like it'll go to your Sanity, it'll go to your content. Like it'll actually go to those platforms. It's not like
that changes everything.
How does it go to it? What does that mean?
Like it.
Well, I would guess they have that GraphQL connection.
Yeah, they have the whole GraphQL layer, data layer. they bought a company around that even.
Yeah, so they have the means to like do this layer of transformation, like we've done on our framework. The past few years with GraphQL, we've tried to like abstract what the content structure you have is from like what you show on the page, how a website is structured, and allow you to create whatever types make sense for your website and your business or your idea.
Yeah. Yeah, if we can get it like for those like core pieces that are like the title, the body, the summary, things like that. Like, you know, I am curious though, like for the fields that like and AI would always have trouble with this, but unless you told it like this is like the structure and this is what's actually important at some point. Like we're working with a client right now, and they probably have like 15 fields that like never show up on the site, that are all for like internal purposes, what historical things, like whatever it might be. That's not uncommon. Or like, oh, this is like the hierarchy of the page, or the the nested categories, things like that, that probably won't show up on a Google Doc, which is a challenge for humans as well. It's like somebody has to answer those questions, and AI can like take a shot at it, but it needs to know that it exists. I'm curious how far down this path they're going to go from like based on what I said earlier of like, they don't want to be a database company. They don't want to be, like how much is this like just painting over the chip, or is this like them like, getting ready to buy a new house and build something
Looks
else?
like they're really taking seriously the composable aspect of it. Even from the product naming, the data layer is called connect. It's not called data store or data map or storage, anything. It's meant to connect to where your data is in, your WordPress, your Shopify, your Contentful, and then give you a way to map that into some visual elements. I think that's where, the create portion comes in. I'd love to see the docs about how, what are the restrictions on components? Like, can I use my current existing website? Do I have to like recreate everything in their own component library?
What I saw, was just you hook up say this field goes to this field, like you hook up the Contentful extension, you hook up the Sanity extension, then you just map the fields. And then it just says, okay, this text goes in here. Because one of the biggest aha moments for me was when, me and Adam, I had heard about ChatGPT like a few days prior, right when it first came out. And then when I'm sitting there next to Adam, I was like, okay, this thing, because I'd used it as like a type ahead, right? I'd used it as like an autocomplete. I still saw it as an autocomplete. It's just going to complete what it had. Well, I looked over and I saw Adam on his phone. He'd put in there, like, I think some code. And then he asked for a new piece of code and it had the sidekick helper in there, something that I know that it had never seen before, but it knew where to put it, how to use it, and it actually deciphered it. I was like, okay, it's not just repeating text back. There's logic and thinking that's happening now. Because like what you were just talking about, Adam, it has to intelligently know. Like if you give it the context about what you're trying to do, like 3.5, it just got it every now and then. Now they're pretty good at that. But everything you talked about, like how do I do a hero component? How do I do a card component? How do I do these things? There's all context you can give the AI and then say, here's the content, make it fit in there. It doesn't have to do much thinking except for put round peg and round hole, right? Like that's pretty much the level of thinking it needs to do if you give it enough context around your code base, your data models, and your styles.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting part from like how we see it respects better the rules and is able to give you that structured answer that you need now. It's not like just reforming. And I find it very interesting how it can become more of a communication layer now between machines. Even you're getting this unstructured text from the user, and then you're going through the AI in different ways to then get back some structured content that then you can use to put on a website for another structured way of reading it. And AI is not entirely like being something you interact on the website. The customers that go to your website are not necessarily using Gen AI, but the way that they consume content is being influentiated by it and helping get that message through, faster and I don't want to say better, or more optimized. We put a lot of trust on the AI, but it all depends on the creator.
Yeah. Like I
Well,
always have these like tiny ideas for apps now just to make the web better. I'll just throw this one out there because somebody can take it if they want. But just like only like unsensationalized headlines. Like, oh my God, you'll never believe what this person did. I'm like, just tell me. And it's like, oh, they took a breath. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. Okay, thanks for not wasting my time. Whether I have an ad blocker on or not, like huge waste of time. So it'd be like, I think AI can help with these things, especially if you're able to kind of like what we're doing. You have this prompt, and it's just like It's like I don't want to see sensationalized headlines, and like I only want what's considered a fact or like what the meat of this is. Like really boil this down to 10% of whatever length it is. You know, like that's really what I want. Like if you wrote 3 paragraphs, like give me like 2 or 3 sentences. If somebody wrote a 40-page blog, it's like, yeah, like you probably put some thought into that, but like knock that down to a executive summary page for me, and I can decide if I want to like read it. So I think that's in my opinion that's a better use than what I'm sure people are doing, or I know they're doing already, is like just regurgitating more and more sensationalized, like meaningless stuff, and then just like spitting it out there. And they're probably all part of the same media company in the end.
yeah, I mean, that's why I like not a sponsor, but they have Ground News is a good site for that. Not to get too, but I think that they're using a lot of AI and sentiment analysis and stuff like that. Have you ever heard of Ground News? I was trying to find. I was trying to find this requirements document that I created back in 2012. Actually, I was looking at the Chrome extension. I actually had a Chrome extension that I created called Spinnernaut. That would be a crowdsourced way of saying like, hey, how much spin does this article have, or how, or like, is it even, this is like 2013, right? Because I saw like all this like flood of just crap coming out like throughout social media, and so this is before the 2016 election, before bot farms and all this stuff, and it's like, yeah, that's going to become a problem. Like, little do we know, it could also be the downfall of, you know, little things called democracy. But it it really, I mean, yeah, we don't know how that's those little, how you talk about it in the headlines. But this site's Ground News, let me just share it with you here on all of these. So for instance, right here you can see like this per trails, it's like heavily right covered, and when you like go into any sort of one, you can kind of see who's covering it, what's not, untracked bias. These are all premium features that I haven't yet, but you can kind of, they have an AI feature. But
This
I've
is
seen a
great.
lot of, yeah, a lot of creators. You can also then see the ownership of the, like, who owns this company that's doing this, who's, yeah.
So are they modifying the titles?
So they are not modifying the titles from what they have two different ways, like just the like, hey, what's in the news, and it just kind of judges it based off of these like leaning left, leaning right. This is kind of the coverage of all of the things talking about this. From what I can tell, maybe this is like a summarized one, because you can actually be
Some,
like, how's the left covering it? How's the right covering it? How's the center?
I
Yeah,
think
I mean,
it's
One cool.
displaying the data that's coming from those different sources. Trying to
Yeah.
figure out if the title is maybe a summarization, but you can see the titles from each of the different wings, in a way, like left, center, and right.
Yeah, I think this is an aggregated.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. Do you know if they put out like a summary? Because I'm not finding out like any summarized versions of the content, which is
Well,
great because
if you get the Premium, I think they do have those kind of AI summaries and stuff like that. But yeah, like take out the bias. One thing that I like that I've seen on this is kind of like blind spots. So like we all live in our media bubbles, and we all have, you know, blind spots in what we consume. And I think that's really important to see like, hey, what am I not being told? Because that's one of the things with media bias, especially, is it's not necessarily that they're lying to you. It's just that they're not telling you the whole truth. Right. So I think this is also an interesting way that you can actually use AI to help with this bite.
Yeah, this is interesting. Yeah, I don't see any like clickbait type things in here. But I mean, that's also much more rampant on like YouTube and other things, related articles, whatever it might be. So yeah, so I'm curious. Yeah, I can look into that and see what they're modifying and things like that. But I think this is great. Like, it's a great. Hopefully, it stays in a way unbiased, view of things. Because I think if you had like an event that happened, like the hurricanes down in Florida, and like that area of the United States has been like devastating over the past like month.
Mm-hmm.
You have one like Trump saying like, oh, he hasn't even called, and then over here it's like he did call but he didn't answer, or like, oh, DeSantis, I saw Kamala Harris was asked about DeSantis, and she was just like, I don't want to play political games, and then like I see somebody else on the right say, why is she playing political games and talking about this? I'm like, Jesus. What actually happened? Have they talked or not? Like,
yeah.
like, do they have a valid reason as to why? Like, just tell me, and then I'll decide if I care at this moment or not. I don't want to see like 50 articles about it.
Well, and that's also too why I swear, man, I can't find. I'm trying to find. When you have these screen sharing apps and all these different things for this, it's never easy to find it. So finally found my share screen. That's also why on my spare time I've been working on this project. Spare time, right? AI policy researchers to answer these very questions. So like I just want the facts, right? Like I want to come in here. So I created this one, like the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, so I can just go in here and I want to find out, hey, what did what are they doing about the homeless problem? So it's looking for this information, it's getting it. I can see, hey, proposed reallocating approximately 13.6 million into it. And this was on, what was it? July 9th. And I can actually go in here and I can actually see, this is a air. This should actually be the PDF from this, but basically like where you can go in, you can actually see the excerpts of what it says either in the transcript, you can link off to the original source. But I started putting, it's like I hear all these things like the immigration bill. Well, that's in the bill. That's not in the bill. Like, well, what's in the bill? Right? Like, does this protect, US citizens that have immigrant families from being deported? Like, I don't know the answer to that question, right? And I think there's like, oh, well, this is in the bill, and this bill is 900 and some pages long. Like, that's the other part. Like, we argue about bills that none of us have read, that we just, to your point, Adam, like just based off of the spend that we have in some thing. It's taking a little bit. It's probably a bug. It's in development. Hope to have it out. But yeah, Project 2020. What does it say about abortion and contraception? It doesn't say that. Well, I can actually get in here and I can actually see, that it does restrict, rights for women's rights issues. So I think this is very important. I think this is a way that instead of having AI tell us necessarily what it is, but letting people find access to the information that already exists and make the decision themselves.
And tell them that they're wrong. You forgot that part. That's a joke, by the way.
And you know what? And honestly, if somebody reads something and they're like, "Well, I don't believe that document," or like, there's only so many levels, right? Because there's going to be some people that, no matter if you show them that, like, well, then this is a plant, right? Or this is someone's hacked in and done this. Like, there's always going to be the next level of thing that eventually you just like, okay, you just have to be. Is it really that you want to know the truth, or you just want to have your own beliefs, not invalidated? Because I think that's the scariest part for people, is to just one say I don't know, which I love the words I don't know. It means I get to learn something new. Or like, I mean, yeah, nobody likes to be told that like they're wrong, or what they've been told is a lie.
Yeah, or somebody they look up to, or a leader, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's. I know we're kind of getting into politics here, but just like how people really react to that. It's like, oh, your leader made a mistake, and they're just like, no. It's like, dude, your world does not need to fall apart. You don't need to attack somebody because of that. People don't know how to handle that. You want to get into like a therapist trauma session around it or whatever, but it's like they need to learn to. They obviously, if you're following anybody that blindly, in my opinion, like, you need to think for yourself more, like, and take a step back, because you have a lot of eggs in one basket, regardless of what your belief is and whether it's politics or something else. It's not a good path to go down in the long run. Be an individual.
I tell my kids to question everything, including myself, which has its challenging moments sometimes. But I mean, I the same way. Like, I've always questioned everything. I think you should too, and just do your own. Now people can actually do their own research. When people said they did their own research, it means they just liked a couple of Facebook posts that they agreed with. Let's be real.
Yeah.
I highly doubt that anyone opened up the 900 and some page Project 2025 document and can quote it line by line. This can.
That's very concerning as well, because I think we're all talking from a very kind of in it situation where we are into AI, we like it, processing information, we kind of trust it as well. And we also want to know the different side of things. But felt like most people really don't have the time, or wouldn't put the time towards reading the full news. Even if it's something that they agree with, most people don't go further than the headline. So I'd like to see how this can improve people on that, and how can we make it easier, but not so much to bias the information as much, but to get it to more people in a way that is, I don't know, shorter form content. Because I'm serious, like, I don't get into news. I don't ever see the news, read the news articles, watch TV or anything like that. I guess, um, but I want to be aware of what's going on with the world. But news is always negative. You only get told what you get scare yourself and justify and get all that information in there to be more content, rich.
One of the things I've been
So
talking with internally about, now that we get our video reels posting automatically, is having like a daily like TLDR unbiased AI news that just comes and scrapes the latest headlines, just like, hey, this is what's happening, like straight up, no bias, put like a
Crap ton
AI
of water in
avatar on
Florida.
it, like like, this is what happened, right? Because I think a lot of people are like that. They get jaded by the news. They don't want to. I was actually curious, because how is it perceived overseas? Because especially with like election season, people start just losing their shit over everything. It seems like I just turn it off. I'm just focused on AI right now. But I think that one of the things I've seen is it's like the world also gets around the U.S. presidential election. I think I saw a poll one time that said like a lot of people would rather vote in the U.S. presidential election than their own. But I couldn't tell you for the life of me who the president of Uruguay is, let alone like when their election is. So like, how is that perceived overseas, like in what's happening in the US?
Yeah, so it all depends. You know, it's usually the news in the US are news in the world. So some people follow it. I don't think there's a lot of movements in here towards making any impact or getting into the information or in the movement anyway. And in here, you know, we don't have anything like this. I think it would be super cool to see an app that's kind of helping people understand politics more, because we get a lot of people that are very adamant about their like ideologies in here and their political party. So they will be very, very kind of biased and in these big different groups that are not sharing the news. And I think the news in here also has a lot of bias themselves. You know, you will find, and people know this, there's the right news, the left news. And even if you do know them, like they get some hate between them. So something like this would really help get the news. You know, we keep thinking about like the content management automation you're talking about and getting this news into other kind of social media platforms. So people that are not so into it get to figure out this information, but in the best way, which I think is like the unbiased way, you know, or at least with the correct categorization to tell me like, this is what they're trying to sell you, but here's the info anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
What do you guys go
I was just
ahead?
going to kind of answer the question just real briefly too. Like, so like we have friends and like, each of us has friends. Yay. Um, that like live in different countries.
You
Some of
guys
them
have
are like
friends?
patriots. Yeah. Two, two of them. Um, but they, like, so they're like expats living over there. And I've asked them when I've gone over and visited or talked to them, like, oh, what do people think? Especially around like when Trump, during that whole cycle, and they said, oh, like, think you guys are crazy. Like, it's just like a shit show over there and all this stuff. But if you like read, I get most of my news, I go on Reddit, like, it links me off to like wherever it links me off to. So I get a pretty wide variety of things. I'll even go on like the conservative forum and see what they're saying and things like that. But every once in a while, somebody comments on something that's like they're from whatever, somewhere else, some other country. But everything is just super confusing to them as to like why this is happening. But like, oh, like how do they don't quite understand how like the different states work. It's like, well, why doesn't Biden just do something? It's like that's not how it works. Only sometimes in this particular thing. Oh yeah, and there's like the cities and the counties and there's this like, and everything has to be go a certain way. But so everybody's found these loopholes. But anyways, they're just kind of confused by the whole thing. But over generally speaking, that they can tell it's a shit show, which I think anybody in the U.S. could agree upon, for different reasons.
I didn't want
Yeah,
to put
I
it
mean,
that bluntly, but we've always seen, especially the past few years. I mean, Trump is a character overseas. He's
he's a
not
character here.
a
He has
president
been for
with
years.
political opinions. He's like a media show. Honestly, it's like, have you seen the U.S. elections? Uh, so
Well, that's the thing that gets me so just the way that we've done it, and I think this, and I think one of the things kind of bringing it back. What do you guys think about actually to AI? Have you seen these kind of AI images that have been being generated of the people on the from the election? So like, you have
that actually
Donald Trump
happened.
and
That happened. That
what
happened. That happened.
that
But
really happened.
is this the
Did,
angle? The
did
angle.
this one really happen too?
No, she doesn't like polka dots. Guarantee that one didn't happen.
Yeah, I guarantee
I
that
won't
one
get
didn't
too
happen.
opinionated here, but
Yeah, I'm sure Trump's gonna change. It would change his position on abortion real quick, um, if that happens. Um, what do you guys think about like the ability to do this? I know. I mean, I can't imagine that's going into 2028 with it being just this green fields, like anything goes, right? Like something's going to happen after this election between now and then. But always the question is like, should it, first off, and then two, like what should be the restrictions around like image generation, videos, stuff like that.
They're not gonna be able to stop it. Like, I mean, they if it was it a federal like deepfakes were were banned in a lot of different places, right? It's funny, like a deepfake videos like years ago. You know, those were like solid, but they took a lot of time for people to like create those, and I don't know what all tools they used to do it. But these are funny, so like yeah, like it's like okay, that obviously did not happen, right? But like let's say that was like Melania, like, but it's gonna get to. I mean, I think it's already there. 95% of people won't know the difference, especially after it's been passed around the internet. The quality degrades, so like you won't have like what I complained about with the ones we're looking at the other day of me. You won't have like the fidelity of this like 4K, 8K, whatever image. You're gonna have a 200 by 200 pixel thing that you're looking on your phone. You won't be able to tell that it's been like highly processed because it's been downgraded so much over time. Point is like I think they're gonna outlaw it if it's being used of people without their explicit consent or something. But they're never gonna stop it. Like,
That would mean like they're going back to, well, I'm sure that didn't happen with OpenAI, but I wonder if the other one we saw the other day, Gemini, was it, Brad, that he showed here that would create things with Disney and Deadpool. So kind of takes me back
you're
to
muted.
Brad. Just asking if you remember the name of that app that he showed a couple of podcasts ago to generate images that were copyrighted.
Yeah, that's so it's Flux. It's the same thing that I'm using for our headshots. It's the same model that most of these images are coming from Twitter, which is part of their paid. It uses Flux as well, which is completely uncensored. And I think one of the stupidest things I heard was like, oh, we'll just watermark them. I'm like, there's literally an AI to take out a watermark, right? Like, you just remove that metadata. Like, idiotic, right? Like, I think you can, because like it's not even necessarily about like, okay, that's funny, that's that. But one of the things that was going on, there was literally, this was going through Trumpaverse, and a lot of people were like, see, this is, well, let me just show you the picture and see if you can spot what's fake about it.
The fact that they're not wet anywhere is
The
one
fact that
thing.
even like Trump's like in the water.
His
Could
thumb
you
is
honestly see that happening?
his thumb is
I don't
blurry.
see
Well,
Kamala doing that either.
It's hard. I can't zoom in enough on
no,
it. Can you
but
zoom
it's a
in a little
good
bit?
picture. I would say it's a really good campaign pro Trump. Him in like a what looks like a rescue or some.
Exactly. So this is going around after the hurricanes saying like, see, he's out there helping people. Where's Kamala? Where's Biden? Like, see, this is the type of stuff that people are prepared for. Is the once again, this looks like it's not trying to be nefarious. It's actually trying to show them in a good light, but for manipulative reasons, right? So I think that this is very scary to me, like this kind of world that we're going into, because, if you're just scrolling along, you're going to look at the image, quickly see the first few comments, which are probably going to be the most engaging slash the most enraging, and then cause you to then, you know, start sharing it and saying stupid stuff until your nephew or it's like, hey, uncle, don't share that. That's not real.
Yeah.
And this always happened, and we know the impact it can have on the elections from what happened a couple of years ago. But now with AI, it becomes like 10x or 1,000x. Before you had to get somebody who was really good at Photoshop and spend like a couple days getting the nitty gritty of the details. Now you can run one prompt and get like 1,000 of this, with 10,000 sensationalist headlines to go with it, and then run it in a campaign. Get access to like millions of people just like that.
This is what we saw, and what scared me so much at Optimizely in the 2016 election was that we saw one campaign, not going to name names, just you can guess it, well, most campaigns are like, hey, I'm going to try this picture of my family and this picture of me. Which one works better? The other one was like, okay, which can drive more rage, engagement, and A/B testing? Like you just said, Max, create 1,000 images, bunch of different supporting headlines, see which one gets the most, you know, engagement.
Yeah, it's all money. It's all money driven and ads and clicks and whatever. They just don't care. Like if people get upset, like they being like a lot of people, not it's not a left right thing. Like
No, I don't
they
believe
want to get
anything the left
views, and it's
says
like,
either.
yeah. The left is just as bad. Like I followed a couple of YouTube channels in the last couple of weeks. It was like at first I was like, oh, this is like giving me like really good insight. But then like the more I was like listening to them, I was like the more like left leaning they got, and like kind of like up mad. They were like trying to do what you were explaining. Like just a little too slanted. I mean, I was like, all right, I'm unsubscribing. Because I don't need that much negativity. Like I can go. It was good to know like, oh, Trump was at this rally or Kamala had this, and then I go read about it enough. If I care, I'll go read about it enough to like come up with my own decision. But most people don't do that.
By the time you're like that far off reading into that message you saw or that post, so you're now in the captions and trying to understand what the headline was about, like you already went through the emotion, and that was optimized by millions of copies to generate a very specific thing on you. It's going to impact how you act in the next few minutes. I know you're just ranting.
Well, and the way you remember things too is like, even if you did that, you saw that a year from now. Oh yeah, I remember. Trump was helping out with that, right? Because it's just you misremembered it, even though you did at the time do it. And it's just that slow boil that's just, and that's why I think it's very important for everyone to know how these things work, which is also why starting next Monday on the 14th, if you're looking to help to identify these and understand how AI works and to really build your own AI agents and do all the amazing things that we talk about on this podcast is starting next week on the 14th. We're doing the 60-day automation challenge, and with the goal being that really our goal is to make it so that everyone knows how, not just a prompt, not just a simple workflow, not just these basic things, but to really showcase how over the 486 different automations that I've created over the last 3 years, how I boiled it down into 60 automations that can automate your entire personal life, your business, and really help you spend time for more things. So we're going to be going over how to set up all your different automation tools, basic automation workflows. We're going to be talking about content creations, creating, using as a writing utility, helping to brainstorm with images, how to do sales automations like proposals, automated outbound emails, helping to get better in your own negotiating tactics. Also advanced marketing, like how do you repurpose a podcast into blog posts, shorts, all that good stuff. How to do video and image and audio, all the different tools that are in there. We've talked about some of them on our podcast about like using them, but how do you actually put them into a production, and how do you use them in your creative process so that it doesn't take away from the creativity, but just helps you to really just visualize your ideas so that then professionals can take it and take it from there. Then customer support enhancements. How do you support your customers? How do you then analyze large amounts of data, whether it's your own internal business, whether it's your own stuff, whether it's the government? HR and people ops, how to use it in those areas around recruiting, hiring, and bringing people on. Engineering automations. We're going to be talking, as we talk a lot about on this podcast, we are going to go through some basics of how to do a basic Chrome extension, a basic web app, a basic mobile app, and a basic desktop app that you can run. All of these automations are on your own local machine, private to you. And that's really our goal with this, is to really show how you can have a personal autonomous sidekick that is integrated with all your different layers, and you can then use it for whatever you need, whether that be marketing, sales, your own personal life. Even I'll be giving examples of from out of the box tools to some of the enterprise tools and everything in between. So showing lots of different ways and use cases to set each of these different automations up using a multitude of tools. So if you're interested, please join us starting at 4 p.m. Pacific. We're going to be live streaming it, but don't worry, you can sign up for the community. Put the link in the description for how you can sign up to get early access to the live stream recordings, a bunch of supporting materials, all the workflows that are already pre-done for you. Everything will be there ready to get going so that you can go into 2025 fully automated and ready to go. You guys
Stuff.
excited about the challenge?
I am looking forward to having 58 to 60 things at my fingertips.
I want to automate at least 3 by 580 things. I want to run your automation challenge, but on 3 different things at a time and see, all the common rules, all the common ground, how much can I do without spending time?
Create me a 61-day challenge.
Yeah, that will actually be one of the lessons is in the advanced marketing is how you can use it to create an entire course, like the one you're in right now.
Meta.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of meta because the one that I'm using in it, because it's the other reason is it's always a challenge to work on your own shit, right? So just automating your own stuff, doing your own sharpening your axe, as we like to say it, is the one that I'm going to be doing is the digital at scale, like starting with its own Google Apps account, launching its site finally that I've been wanting to get up, doing all the content from, that this podcast should be pumping out that we do for our clients and we do for there. So I'm going to be using this as the area. And if you wanted to come in and join, just be part of the community, we also have a Discord that we set up as well. So come in, chat. When we do live podcasts, we'll engage, we'll talk with the community in there, so you can come in, ask your questions about AI. But we're really excited to kick this challenge off, kick the community off, and start meeting all you builders out there that are excited about AI. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you, gentlemen, and until next time, bye-bye.
Awesome. See you guys.